My parents sent you a package, my husband called out from the kitchen. He had just rinsed the last plate after dinner, the kind of beige, forgettable meal we threw together on busy nights. When I turned around, he was holding a small cardboard parcel, ordinary brown, standard shipping label, with a cheerful birthday sticker slapped on the side. Nothing about it looked unusual. At first. He opened it casually, the way you open a pair of socks, mildly interested, but not overly invested. "It's from your parents," he said, pulling out a sleek black velvet box. The moment I saw it, my face went cold. My stomach tightened in a way I couldn't explain yet. Without thinking, I blurted, "Don't touch it." He froze mid-motion, staring at me like I'd just told him to put the gift in the freezer. "What? Why?" "Please," I whispered, "just don't touch it." He blinked, confused, but I could see a flicker of concern in his eyes. This wasn't me being dramatic. This was instinct. Pure, unfiltered instinct. You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. I took the box from him gently and wrapped it in a tea towel, careful not to let my fingers touch the velvet. Even through the fabric, I could feel the weight. Too heavy. Something about it didn't belong, not in my parents' world, and definitely not in ours. I set it on the edge of the table, like it might lunge if I wasn't watching. Then I pulled out my phone and snapped a clean photo of it, not for nostalgia, but for evidence. "Check what?" my husband asked, still confused. "I'm not sure yet," I said, already typing the manufacturer's name into the search bar. The results loaded fast: retail listings, serial number matches, box design comparisons. It didn't take long. When the number appeared on my screen, my pulse skipped. "Look at this," I said, turning the phone toward him. He leaned in. His eyebrows rose. $3, 800? We just stared at each other. My parents weren't wealthy. They had never given a gift worth even a fraction of that. The only time numbers like that appeared in my family's life was on medical bills or debts. I didn't want to believe it. Not about my own parents. But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't generosity. This was something else. Something dangerous. And if I was right, that watch wasn't a present, it was bait. I wish I could say my suspicion came out of nowhere, that I was just being paranoid. But the truth is, there was history behind that instant gut reaction. Years of it. Growing up, my family always claimed they treated my brother and me equally. If by equally, you mean I did all the work, and he got away with everything. I had chore charts, deadlines, lists taped to my bedroom door. He had ideas. Mostly about how unfair the world was to gifted people who just hadn't found their gift yet. I was the one filling out college applications while he was still deciding if he even wanted to finish high school. And while my parents were never rich, they were proud. Proud enough to hide the fact that sometimes the bills went unpaid. I didn't judge. I just quietly paid their phone bill when it was about to be cut off, bought groceries when their pantry was bare, sent money without expecting it back, because that's what you do for family, right? That didn't change when I met Ethan. He wasn't wealthy. He didn't have a high-powered job. He wasn't even very tall, which my mother seemed oddly disappointed about. But he had something they didn't: integrity. Ethan ran a small community charity that provided hot meals to people living on the streets. He started with nothing, just borrowed folding tables, a church basement, and more heart than one person should have to carry alone. I fell for him quickly. At first, I just volunteered on weekends, peeling potatoes, handing out tea. But over time, I became part of it. I helped with budgeting, outreach, and eventually we got married. The charity grew, not fast, but steady. We opened a second location, then a third. It was still a shoestring operation, but we were making a real difference. My parents noticed. By then, they were heading into retirement. No pension big enough to live comfortably, no real savings. My brother was still at home, dabbling in business ideas and forgetting to take the trash out. So we offered them something: part-time positions at the charity. Light admin work, event coordination, nothing too demanding, but enough to give them income and purpose. For a while, it felt like a win for everyone. Then, 6 months ago, things changed. My brother suddenly announced he was moving out into an apartment he'd bought, not rented. He said he'd launched a tech startup. Couldn't share details, NDAs, patents, confidential partners. I asked a few questions before realizing I'd never get a straight answer. Around that same time, my father brought us a new opportunity, a local food supplier he claimed was cheaper, healthier, and better than what we had. Ethan asked a few questions, the numbers looked fine, and we trusted him. That trust wouldn't last long. At first, the change in suppliers barely registered. The delivery truck showed up on time, invoices matched what we'd agreed to, and my dad seemed pleased with himself for finding us a better deal. We wanted to believe it was exactly that, a win for the charity, a rare moment where everyone was pulling in the same direction. But within weeks, the whispers started. Volunteers mentioned that the food seemed different. Nothing dramatic, just little things. The chicken looked paler. The vegetables seemed limp. Then, complaints from the people we served, stomach cramps, nausea. One man ended up in the hospital after 2 days of eating nothing but our meals. He was dehydrated, weak, and scared. Ethan came home that night more silent than I'd ever seen him. Then, without a word, he pulled out every single invoice, delivery log, and supplier report from the past 3 months. What he found made my skin crawl. The supplier had been substituting cheap cuts of meat for the quality products we were paying for. Canned goods past expiration. Off-brand staples that weren't even labeled properly. And yet, they charged us as if they'd delivered the premium products we'd ordered. When Ethan told me, I felt a cold wave run through me. We were feeding people in need, some of whom had nowhere else to get a meal. This wasn't just dishonest. It was dangerous. Ethan called my parents in for a meeting. We expected shock, maybe outrage. Instead, we got pushback. My mother brushed it off as a misunderstanding. My father said people exaggerate, that maybe the sick customers had eaten something else before coming to us. He insisted the invoices made sense. He even said pulling out of the deal would ruin business relationships and look bad. That last part set something off in me. This wasn't about the people we served. It wasn't about the charity's mission. They were defending the supplier like they had skin in the game, and not in a good way. Ethan, normally calm and deliberate, was ready to terminate the contract immediately. I was right there with him. But my parents' resistance, it wasn't just stubbornness. It was desperate. Defensive. Like they knew that if we pulled the plug, something much bigger would unravel. And then, just as Ethan was drafting the termination notice, the box arrived. The sleek, heavy, black velvet box worth nearly $4,000. The one my parents had sent. And in that moment, every instinct told me it wasn't a gift. It was a message. And possibly a bribe. The morning after the watch arrived, the kitchen felt heavier than usual. Ethan brewed coffee. I burned the toast, not on purpose, but I didn't bother making another batch. The wrapped watch still sat on the counter, the same tea towel from the night before folded neatly around it like a shroud. Neither of us touched it. We didn't speak much. Not because we were angry at each other, but because we both knew the same truth without saying it. This wasn't just a gift. It was connected to the supplier. And if we opened it, if Ethan so much as wore it, the meaning would be cemented. I wrote 2 letters before we even finished breakfast. Plain white envelopes, no flourishes, no apologies, just polite, formal notice of immediate termination. One for my mother. One for my father. By mid-morning, we were in the car, the watch, and the letters in my lap. The drive to the charity office was silent, not tense, not resigned, just braced, like standing still before a storm hits the glass. When we arrived, my parents were already at their desks. My mom was rereading the same email. My dad had a spreadsheet open, but was scrolling on his phone. Neither looked up when we walked in. We didn't stop at reception. We walked straight to the staff room, neutral ground. Harsh lighting, mismatched chairs, no clients to overhear. Ethan placed the wrapped watch on the table. I slid the envelopes beside it. My father looked down, then up at us. "What is this?" "Open it," I said. He did. 2 termination letters. 1 month's pay. No further involvement. My mother's face went pale. You're firing us? Yes, I said. Exactly that. My father pushed his chair back, the legs screeching against the linoleum. We're your family. Not anymore, I replied. He tried to stare me down, but I reached for my phone, opened the photo I'd taken of the watch, and showed them the online listing. $3,800, I said. Want to explain how you could afford this when you couldn't even afford to fix your boiler last winter? I paid that bill for you. Silence. Where did the money come from? I pressed. It was a gift, my father said finally. From who? More silence. My mother's voice broke the air. We were trying to help your brother. And just like that, the pieces began falling into place, pieces I didn't want to see. It didn't take long for the fallout to arrive. 2 days after we fired my parents, the pounding started hard, urgent, the kind of knock meant to make a point. When I opened the door, my brother stood there. Face flushed, breathing heavy, like he'd sprinted across town. He didn't bother with hello. What did you do? He snapped. Ethan appeared behind me, silent but watchful. Why don't you tell us what this is about? He asked. You know exactly what this is about, my brother shot back. You canceled the contract. You weren't supposed to. You were supposed to stay quiet, let it run. I folded my arms. And now? Now the deal's off and people want their money back, he said, shifting uncomfortably. Which people? I asked. That half-second pause told me everything. They paid up front, he muttered. Now they're demanding it back and they're not exactly the type to send polite emails. I felt a cold clarity settle over me. So let me get this straight. You took money to push that supplier through, and now you're the victim because we refused to serve people expired food. I didn't know the food was bad, he said quickly. Of course you didn't, I replied, because you never ask questions when money's involved. His jaw tightened. I'm going to have to sell my apartment now. Maybe you shouldn't have bought it with money that wasn't yours, Ethan said flatly. I was helping the family, my brother snapped. No, Ethan countered, you were helping yourself. There was a long silence before my brother's voice dropped to something lower, sharper. If you bring the supplier back, this can still be fixed. We're not bringing them back, I said. You should think about what happens if you don't, he replied. I locked eyes with him. Was that a threat? It's a fact. We didn't slam the door, but it was close. 3 days later, the real attack began. Anonymous social media accounts accusing us of misusing donations. Old Facebook groups resurrected just to question our integrity. Comments on local forums. Did you know the manager drives a car worth more than your donations? Ask them where the Rolex came from. Then came the blurry photo of the watch, ours. Messages to donors, hashtags, and targeted posts. By the end of the week, 2 major sponsors had paused donations. An upcoming fundraising event was quietly canceled. And in the office, the mood was changing. The volunteers were unsettled. Our coordinator cried in the kitchen. And Ethan. Ethan looked tired in a way I had never seen before. I had no doubt this wasn't random. This was orchestrated. And my family was behind it. The attacks didn't slow down. If anything, they picked up momentum like someone feeding fuel to the fire. Every morning, there was something new. A fake review on our charity's Google page. A donor forwarding a warning email about our finances. A tagged post claiming Ethan lined his own pockets while the homeless went hungry. It wasn't just hurtful, it was strategic. They were trying to choke us financially, to scare our supporters into backing away. Then the email came. No signature. No greeting. Just one line. If the supplier is reinstated and our positions restored, the attacks will stop. I read it 3 times, and on the 4th I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so shameless. Ethan walked into the office and saw me staring at the screen. What's that? He asked. I turned it toward him. His jaw tightened. We should report this. I nodded. Tomorrow morning. That night, neither of us slept much. I kept turning the email over in my mind, wondering how my own parents and brother could take it this far. It wasn't just family conflict anymore, this was calculated damage. The next morning, we went to the police station with everything. We brought the supplier invoices, the volunteer complaints, the social media screenshots, the threatening email. We explained the contract, the resistance we'd faced, the smear campaign, and now, the blackmail. The officer taking our statement didn't flinch. "You're not the first," she said, flipping through the evidence. "This kind of thing is happening more often than you think. But you did the right thing by coming forward." Her words felt like a lifeline, proof we weren't overreacting. Still, I couldn't help wondering if we'd already waited too long. When we left the station, the air felt different. Not lighter, not exactly. But clearer, like we'd crossed a line and there was no turning back. We weren't just defending the charity anymore. We were putting my own family in the crosshairs. And deep down, I knew what that meant. When the truth came out, there would be no going back to Sunday dinners or polite small talk. The ties we had were already frayed. Soon, they'd be cut completely. It took 6 months for the story to hit the headlines. When it did, it spread like wildfire. The front page of the local paper ran it first: charity scandal, bribery, fraud, and a daughter who turned in her own family. Then a regional magazine picked it up, followed by a radio segment. The details spilled out in black and white, no way to spin them. My parents had taken a $15,000 payment from the supplier just weeks before we approved their contract. The watch? Part of the bribe. And that payment had been funneled, in part, to help my brother put a deposit on his apartment. The catering company turned out to be a shell. Its CEO, once a familiar face in local business circles, was sentenced to a year in prison, fined heavily, and stripped of his license. Their website vanished. Their name became a warning in nonprofit networks. Dear background checks. Always. My brother got probation and 200 hours of community service, ironically, at a food bank. The apartment was seized. He didn't call. He didn't show up at the trial. My parents weren't so lucky. They were sentenced to 18 months in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and bribery. Most of their savings gone in fines, $50,000 they would never get back. In our small town, reputations are currency, and theirs was bankrupt. No more neighborly nods at the post office. No more invitations. Even the people who had known them for decades couldn't look them in the eye. And us? We were cleared. Officially. Publicly. The State Department of Charitable Oversight released a statement confirming that Ethan and I had acted responsibly and with integrity. The donors who had paused their contributions returned. The event that had been canceled was rescheduled and sold out. Volunteers came back. I remember the day the board called a special meeting. Every single member voted unanimously to reaffirm Ethan's leadership. In the staff kitchen afterward, someone brewed fresh coffee. There was laughter again, genuine, unforced laughter. For the first time in months, the space felt like it belonged to us again. It wasn't victory in the traditional sense. It was something quieter, steadier. The knowledge that we had faced the fire, told the truth, and come out on the other side without compromising what we stood for. The damage to my family could never be undone. But the damage to the charity? That could be healed. And we were already doing it, one hot meal at a time.